In the distant past, long before cities, before written stories, and before the knowledge of the stars above, a tribe of early humans lived in the shadow of the great ice. Their lives were marked by survival, the rhythm of the seasons, and the hunt. They lived in a time when the world was a wild, untamed place, and the creatures they encountered were as fierce as the land itself. The tribe, known as the Thrash, had heard tales of the great beasts that roamed the land. The mammoths, their fur thick, and their tusks like curved swords. The story spoke of a creature so massive, so powerful, it could crush trees with a single step. But there were also whispers of something even greater, something older, something that stalked the earth before even the mammoths. The Thunder Beast. The Thunder Beast was a creature of legend, a giant, hulking figure with the body of a bear, but the size of a mountain, with tusks like massive pillars and eyes that glowed like fire. Some said it could summon the storm with its roar. Most of the tribe laughed at such stories, but deep in the heart of the elders, a fear lingered. They had never seen it, but they knew that all legends were born from truth. On the eve of the longest night, when the stars shone brightest, the tribe's chief, Koran, stood by the fire, the flicker of the flames dancing in his eyes. He spoke to his people, his voice calm, yet carrying the weight of something unspoken. "Tomorrow, we hunt the last mammoth," he declared, a decision made after days of scouting the herds. "We must feed the tribe for the coming winter." The people gathered their weapons, stone-tipped spears, heavy clubs, and sharp knives. The hunters, led by Koran's son, Tariq, prepared themselves for the most dangerous hunt of their lives. The mammoth herds were moving south, toward the river that would be their final refuge before the ice claimed the land. As dawn broke, the tribe set out, moving in silence, guided by Tariq, whose eyes were sharp as a hawk's. They followed the tracks of the mammoths for miles, deeper into the wilderness, where the trees grew taller, and the ground beneath their feet was soft with moss. But as they neared the river, something stirred in the shadows. Tariq halted, his breath steady. His instincts screamed that something was wrong. He signaled for the others to stop. Out of the mist, through the trees, emerged a shape, massive, far larger than any mammoth the tribe had ever seen. It was the Thunder Beast. The ground trembled with each step it took. Its enormous tusks swept the trees aside as though they were grass. Its fur was thick, dark as night, and its eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. Koran's voice rang out through the silence. "Do not fear, my people. We are hunters, and this is our world. We fight, or we die." The tribe's hunters readied their weapons, but Tariq knew that no spear or club would fell such a beast. It was too powerful, too ancient. The Thunder Beast's roar split the air, a sound like the crash of thunder, and the skies above seemed to darken as if in response. In that moment, Tariq made a decision. He had heard the old stories of how the Thunder Beast was not a creature of flesh alone, but one tied to the spirits of the earth. To defeat it, they would need more than weapons. They would need courage and the strength of the land itself. Tariq approached the Thunder Beast, standing tall before it. He spoke the ancient words, a prayer to the earth that had been passed down from his ancestors. His words echoed through the forest, and the creature paused, as if it recognized a call. The Thunder Beast's glowing eyes met Tariq's, and in that moment, the ground stilled. The storm ceased, the clouds parted, and a peace that had not been felt for eons settled over the land. Tariq understood then. The Thunder Beast was not a foe to be slain, but a guardian of balance, an ancient force that kept the earth in harmony. With one final glance, the Thunder Beast turned and disappeared into the mist, vanishing as quickly as it had come. The tribe returned to their camp, having faced not just the hunt of a lifetime, but the encounter with something much greater than themselves. They had learned that some legends were not meant to be defeated, but understood and respected. And as the first snow of winter began to fall, the Thrash knew that they would survive, not just because of their strength, but because they had learned to live in harmony with the wild, respecting the mighty creatures of the earth the Varash tribe returned to their camp, their hearts still pounding with the encounter, but now filled with a new understanding. Tarek, the young hunter who had stood before the Thunder Beast, became a figure of awe and reverence. His courage and the wisdom he had gained in that brief, eerie moment with the creature marked him as a leader among his people. But even he felt a deep, gnawing uncertainty in his heart. The Thunder Beast had left, but its presence lingered in the winds, the trees, and the very soil beneath their feet. As winter drew closer, the temperature dropped, and the land became a frozen wilderness. The mammoth herds had vanished, migrating to distant lands where the ice was less harsh. The Varash had few supplies left, and hunger began to gnaw at their bellies. Koran called for a gathering, seeking counsel from his elders, but even they seemed unsettled. They spoke of the seasons changing, of the land shifting, and how they were no longer in control. Tarek's encounter with the Thunder Beast had unsettled them all. One night, as the moon hung high in the sky, Tarek found himself alone by the riverbank. The wind howled through the trees, and the frozen water cracked beneath the cold. He looked out over the vast expanse of snow and ice, the world both beautiful and cruel. His thoughts wandered to the Thunder Beast and its mysterious power. Suddenly, a shadow fell across him, and his heart skipped a beat. He turned, expecting to see a wild beast, but instead, it was a figure, an old woman wrapped in fur, her face lined with age and wisdom, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. "You seek answers, young one," she said, her voice like the whisper of the wind through the trees. Tarek nodded, his breath visible in the cold air. "I seek understanding." The Thunder Beast, it was not a creature of this world, I believe. It had the power of the earth itself. The old woman smiled, her eyes glinting with something ancient. The Thunder Beast is no mere animal. It is a spirit of the land, an old guardian who has watched over this world since the time of the first creatures. The ice, the storms, the earth itself, they are in its blood, but something has disturbed the balance. The mammoths, the great beasts of the earth, are leaving. And now, the land is calling out. Tarek's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "The Thunder Beast was not the only one of its kind," the woman said, her voice becoming more distant, as if speaking of an age long past. "There are others, ancient beings tied to the earth, the mountains, the rivers, the sky. But the balance is shifting. The storms are growing stronger. The land is restless. The mammoths have gone, and soon the land will grow barren. It is a sign of great change." Tarek felt a chill run down his spine. "What can we do? How can we survive?" The woman looked at him with knowing eyes. "Survival depends on more than just the hunt, Tarek. It depends on understanding the land, respecting it, and finding the old paths that lead to harmony with the creatures that inhabit it. The Thunder Beast has given you a gift. You must use it wisely. You must seek the others and the ancient spirits if you wish to restore the balance before it is too late." The old woman's words hung heavy in the air. Before Tarek could ask more, she turned, her figure dissolving into the night as if she had never been there. The next morning, Tarek shared his encounter with the tribe, but the elders were divided. Some believed the old woman's words were a warning to be heeded, while others thought it was just another tale spun by a dreamer. But Tarek could not shake the feeling that the world around them was changing in ways they did not understand. As the days grew colder, the tribe's food stores dwindled, and the hunters became desperate. The mammoths had not returned, and the great beasts of the land seemed to have vanished into the distant mountains. One night, Tarek and a group of hunters ventured into the hills to search for any sign of game. They followed a trail of footprints, large and strange, unlike any they had seen before. After hours of tracking, they stumbled upon a great cave, its entrance hidden beneath a canopy of icicles. As they entered, a feeling of deep unease washed over them. The air inside the cave was warm, a stark contrast to the freezing cold outside. In the depths of the cave, they found something that made their blood run cold. There, lying in the shadows, was another creature, an enormous figure, with fur as dark as the night, eyes that burned like embers, and tusks longer than a spear. It was not the Thunder Beast, but something equally as ancient. The creature's body was still, but there was a sense that it was waiting, as if it had been lying there for eons, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Tarek stepped forward, feeling a deep connection to the creature, as if it recognized him. He knew this was the second guardian the woman had spoken of, the spirit of the mountains. He could feel its power, a power that could shape the very land, but also one that could bring destruction if awakened too soon. The tribe had come to a crossroads. The creatures of the land were calling out, and the balance of the world was shifting. Tarek knew that the only way forward was to learn from the ancient guardians and restore harmony to the land before it was consumed by the storms. The journey ahead would not be easy, but Tarek was ready. He had the wisdom of the Thunder Beast and the power of the ancient spirits. It was time to answer the call of the wild, to face the storm, and to find a way back to balance before it was lost forever. With the discovery of the ancient creature in the cave, Tarek felt the weight of the land's troubles more deeply than ever. He had not only seen the Thunder Beast, but now stood before another guardian of the earth, a creature that seemed older than time itself. It was clear that the shift in the balance wasn't simply a matter of survival. It was a matter of fate. As the hunters gathered around him, Tarek shared what he had learned from the old woman and the encounter with the mountain guardian. His words fell on both eager and fearful ears. Some of the tribe's warriors wanted to hunt the creature, believing it was the source of their troubles. Others felt a deep reverence for it, sensing that it was far more than a simple beast to be slain. Koran, the tribe's chief, was silent for a long time, his weathered face unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "We do not hunt these creatures. They are our ancestors' protectors, not our enemies. If we are to survive, we must understand them." Tarek nodded, his mind racing with the possibilities. The old woman spoke of the balance, of the land itself growing restless. "The mammoths have left, and so must we. But we cannot face the storm alone. We must seek the help of the guardians, the spirits of the earth. The Thunder Beast led me to this place for a reason." Koran's eyes narrowed. "Where will you go?" Tarek turned to face the snow-covered peaks in the distance, where the mountains met the endless sky. "I must journey further north, where the first of the ancient spirits slumbers. There lies the heart of the storm. Only there can I find the answers we seek." The tribe prepared for their departure, packing supplies for the journey that would take them through untamed wilderness. It was a dangerous path. The cold was fierce, the snow endless, and wild creatures roamed the land, undeterred by the tribe's presence. The Darash had been hunters for generations, but this journey would test them in ways they had never imagined. Days turned into weeks as Tarek and his closest companions, including Koran, Tarek's sister Arva, and a brave young hunter named Lyra, pushed forward. The land grew harsher with each step. The nights were bitterly cold, and the howling winds seemed to carry the sound of distant roars, the voice of the storm that threatened the world. That on the 7th day of their journey, they came upon a valley filled with ancient stone circles. The air was thick with energy, and the earth beneath their feet hummed as though alive. Tarek knew this was a place of power, where the ancient ones had once walked, and where the guardians might still dwell. As they entered the valley, Tarek felt a presence around them, as if the very rocks and trees were watching, waiting. He stepped forward, calling out to the spirits of the land. "We seek the guardians. We seek the way to restore balance." The winds quieted, and the earth trembled slightly beneath his feet. Then, from the shadows of the valley, emerged a creature unlike any the Darash had seen before. It was a great wolf, its fur glimmering like the stars, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Its presence was overwhelming, and the tribe felt both awe and fear. The wolf spoke, its voice echoing in Tarek's mind. "You have come far, young one, but the road ahead is fraught with peril. The storm that rages across the land is not the work of the thunder beast or the mountain guardian alone. It is the work of the land itself, wounded by greed and neglect. The balance has been shattered, and only by mending the old ways can it be healed. Tarek stepped forward, his voice steady. How can we heal the land? We are but a small tribe, and the world is vast and full of dangers. Where do we begin? The wolf's eyes glinted, as if it had seen countless souls come and go. You begin by returning to the old paths. You must awaken the guardians and restore the ties that bind the earth to its children. Only when the land's wounds are healed will the storm cease. With a low growl, the wolf turned and began walking deeper into the valley. Follow me, it called, and I will show you what you must do. The tribe followed the wolf for hours, their breath visible in the frigid air. As they passed through the valley, Tarek could feel the power growing stronger, the air thick with magic. Finally, they reached a great stone circle, older than anything they had seen before. In the center of the circle stood an altar of moss-covered stone, surrounded by carvings that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. This is the heart of the earth, the wolf said. Here, the spirits of the land gather to renew the balance. You must perform the rite of the guardians. Only then can you call upon the powers that sleep beneath the earth. Arva, who had studied the old ways, stepped forward. The rite, it is an ancient ceremony, one that has not been performed in generations. It requires offerings to the earth, gifts of the land, the sky, and the water. We must show the guardians that we respect the forces of nature, that we understand our place in the world. Tarek nodded. He knew the rite was dangerous, requiring great sacrifice, but he also knew that this was their only chance to restore balance to the land and stop the storms that had been growing stronger with each passing day. As the tribe began to gather the offerings, stones from the river, feathers from the great birds of the sky, and herbs from the sacred forest, Tarek placed his hand on the stone altar, feeling its warmth. His mind was focused and his heart steady. The wolf stood beside him, its eyes glowing with ancient power. This is the moment. Do not falter. Tarek closed his eyes, and as he began to chant the ancient words, the earth trembled. A great light erupted from the altar, bathing the valley in a blinding glow. The storm that had raged across the land seemed to pause, as if it was holding its breath. Tarek felt the power of the guardians stirring beneath the earth, a force older than time itself. Then, all was silent. The wind stopped. The air grew still. The storm that had haunted the land for so long began to recede, as though it was being drawn back into the earth from which it had come. Tarek opened his eyes and saw that the wolf had vanished, leaving only a faint trail of stardust in the air. The stone circle hummed with power, and the world felt as though it had exhaled a long, held breath. The balance had been restored, but Tarek knew that this was only the beginning. The journey to understand the land, to live in harmony with the guardians, had just begun. With the storm retreating and the winds finally calming, the Darash tribe felt a fleeting sense of peace. The land, once caught in turmoil, had grown still. But even as the light of dawn broke over the mountains, Tarek knew that the peace they had won was fragile. The land's wounds were deep, and the journey to truly restore balance had only just begun. The tribe gathered around the ancient stone circle, their faces filled with awe and reverence. They had witnessed the power of the rite and the transformation that followed. The storm had abated, but there were still many questions and many dangers that awaited them on their path. Tarek stood at the center of the stone circle, his hand resting on the altar, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath his fingertips. The power of the guardians lingered in the air, and in that moment, he could feel the weight of his responsibility. He had heard the wolf's words. The balance had been restored, but the land still needed healing. The storm had been a symptom, not the cause. The earth itself, scarred by the greed of those who had come before, needed something more than just the power of the guardians. It needed a new beginning. Quran, the chief, approached Tarek, his eyes filled with concern. "What now, son? The storm is gone, but the land is still barren. We've seen the power of the Guardians, but we cannot rely on them alone. We need to rebuild, and our people are weary." Tarek looked to the horizon, where the sun's first rays touched the peaks of the distant mountains. "We need to follow the old ways," he said softly. "The Guardians have shown us the path. It's not about just surviving. It's about learning to live with the land. We must restore the earth, step by step. If we are to heal the land, we must work in harmony with it, not just take from it." Arva, who had been studying the ancient rites, nodded in agreement. "The land speaks to us in many ways. The storms were the earth's cry for help, for the balance had been shattered. But we must listen, Tarek. There are other places, other guardians that can help us. We must seek them out and understand the lessons they hold." With these words, the Darash tribe made a decision. They would leave the valley and journey farther into the wilds, seeking the ancient places of power that the old woman and the wolf had spoken of. They would not rely on the guardians alone, but would work with them, learning from the spirits of land, the sky, the rivers, and the forests. They would restore the earth, not as conquerors, but as stewards. The first destination was a sacred forest to the west, said to be home to a powerful guardian, the spirit of the trees. The trees there were ancient, older than the land itself, and it was believed that they held the memories of the world, stretching back to the time of the first creatures. If the tribe could learn to commune with the spirit of the trees, they could begin to understand the deeper forces at work in the land. As they traveled, the terrain changed. The forests became thicker, darker, and more mysterious. The air was heavy with the scent of moss and pine, and the sounds of the wild echoed all around them. Strange animals watched them from the shadows, and the sky above seemed ever-changing, a swirling canvas of clouds and light. After many days of travel, they reached the edge of the forest, where the trees grew so large that their branches seemed to touch the sky. The ground beneath their feet was soft and springy, covered with layers of fallen leaves and ancient roots that twisted and turned like the veins of the earth itself. At the heart of the forest stood a tree unlike any other. Its bark was silver, its leaves shimmering with an ethereal glow, as if they were made of light itself. Tarek approached it slowly, feeling a sense of reverence wash over him. This was the tree of the spirit of the trees, a guardian that had watched over the land for countless ages. As he stood before the tree, a voice echoed in his mind, ancient and deep, as though it came from the very roots of the earth. "You seek to heal the land, young one?" the voice asked. Tarek nodded, his heart filled with a quiet resolve. "We have already begun, but the path is unclear. The land has been scarred by those who have come before us. We need to understand how to heal it, how to restore the balance that has been lost." The tree's voice was soft, like a whisper carried on the wind. The balance is not something that can be restored in one lifetime. It takes patience, understanding, and respect. You must listen to the land and to the spirits who inhabit it. Only then can you begin to heal the wounds that have been inflicted. Tarek stepped forward, his hand resting on the silver bark. "What must we do?" "The land needs time to heal," the tree said. "You must nurture it, not just with your hands, but with your hearts. The storms will continue to rage until the people learn to live in harmony with the earth. You cannot take more than you give. You must plant the seeds of the future and tend to them with care." With that, the tree began to glow even brighter, and Tarek felt a surge of energy flow through him, as though the very essence of the earth was entering his soul. The knowledge of the forest, the wisdom of the trees, filled his mind. He saw visions of the past, of a time when the earth had been whole, and of the great civilizations that had risen and fallen because they had forgotten the old ways. The vision shifted, and Tarek saw a future where the Darash tribe and all people lived in balance with the earth, honoring the guardians and understanding the cycles of nature. It was a world where the storms no longer raged, and the land was green and fertile once more. The vision faded, and Tarek found himself standing before the tree again, his heart filled with hope. He knew now what he must do. The journey ahead would not be easy, but the path was clear. He turned to Quran and the tribe. We must return home, and we must teach the people the old ways. We must learn to live with the land, to listen to its wisdom, and to heal its wounds. Only then will the storm cease, and only then will the earth truly be restored. Quran nodded, his face filled with pride. We will follow you, Tariq. You have seen the way, and we will walk it with you. And so, with the blessing of the spirit of the trees, the Darash tribe began their journey back to their homeland. The path ahead was uncertain, but with each step, they carried the knowledge of the guardians and the wisdom of the earth. They would heal the land, one seed at a time, and ensure that the balance was restored, not just for their tribe, but for all who called the earth home. The storm had passed, but the true work of restoration had only just begun. Tariq and the Darash tribe returned home with newfound knowledge, a sense of purpose, and a deep respect for the land they had nearly lost. The journey to the sacred forest and the encounter with the spirit of the trees had changed them all. They had learned that healing the earth was not a quick or easy task. It was a lifelong commitment to harmony with the land and its ancient guardians. When they arrived back at the valley, the first signs of change were already visible. The winds were calmer, and the sun shone with a warmth that seemed unfamiliar after so many seasons of cold and storm. The once barren landscape was beginning to show signs of life, the first shoots of new growth emerging from the soil. However, despite the early signs of recovery, the tribe knew that the true test had only just begun. The people, weary from their struggle to survive, still held many fears and doubts. Would they be able to change their ways? Would they accept the wisdom of the guardians and the lessons of the land? Quran called a council meeting, bringing together the elders, the hunters, the farmers, and all those who played a part in the tribe's survival. Tariq stood before them, the weight of leadership heavier on his shoulders than ever before. We have been blessed with the knowledge of the guardians, Tariq began, his voice steady but filled with a deep urgency. We have seen the power of the land and the spirits who protect it. But to truly heal, we must change how we live. We must give back to the earth as much as we take. We must honor the balance, not just in our rituals, but in everything we do. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard tales of the old ways of living in harmony with the earth, but many had grown used to the demands of survival. The old ways had been forgotten by most, replaced by the harsh realities of hunting and gathering to stay alive. How do we begin? One of the elders asked, his voice full of doubt. The land is still cold and unforgiving. How do we know that this is not just a passing blessing? Tariq turned toward the valley, where the early signs of life were sprouting from the earth. He could feel the pulse of the land beneath his feet, the energy of the guardians flowing through the air. The land is healing, but we must help it. The storms were not just nature's wrath. They were a reflection of the imbalance caused by the way we lived. We must change how we hunt, how we gather, and how we plant. We must start by learning the ways of the guardians, the cycles of nature, and live in rhythm with them. Arva, who had studied the ancient texts and the rites of the earth, stepped forward. We must plant new seeds, not just in the soil, but in the hearts of our people. We must teach the children the wisdom of the land. The hunters must learn the ways of respect, taking only what is needed and giving thanks to the creatures who share their lives with us. The farmers must learn how to tend the earth with care, working with the seasons, not against them. The council listened in silence, and for the first time in many seasons, Tariq saw a spark of hope in their eyes. The old ways might seem foreign, but the land was speaking to them, and it was hard to ignore its call. Over the following weeks, the Darash tribe began the slow, laborious process of change. They started by planting new crops, working with the rhythms of the seasons, and tending to the soil with reverence. The hunters, guided by Tariq's wisdom, began to hunt with respect, only taking what was necessary and never more than what the land could give. They made offerings to the spirits of the earth, thanking them for the creatures they shared their lives with. The most difficult change was in the hearts of the people. Many had lived for so long with the belief that they were masters of the earth, taking what they needed to survive. The idea of giving back, of living in harmony with the earth instead of controlling it, was a difficult concept to embrace. But Tarek and Arva, along with a few other trusted elders, worked tirelessly to teach the younger generation. They spoke of the balance, of the ancient guardians, and of the ways that had once kept the earth thriving. One day, as Tarek walked through the valley, he saw something that filled him with pride and hope. The first true harvest in many seasons. The crops, though still young, were strong and vibrant. The wild animals, once scarce, had begun to return to the valley. The trees, too, had started to regrow, their leaves turning green once again. But even as the land began to heal, Tarek knew that their work was far from over. The storm had been a warning, but the earth was still fragile. There were many challenges ahead, and not all of them came from the land itself. As the months passed, news began to trickle into the valley. Other tribes, some far to the south and others to the east, had heard of the Darash tribe's transformation and were beginning to take notice. Some were curious, eager to learn the ways of the guardians, while others were suspicious and wary. There were whispers of other tribes who sought to claim the land for themselves, to push the Darash tribe out and take what they had worked so hard to restore. One evening, as Tarek and Quran sat by the fire, discussing the future of the tribe, a scout came running into the camp, breathless with urgency. "Chief, Tarek, the warriors from the south approach. They demand that we give up our land." Quran stood, his hand on his spear. "How many are they?" "They are many," the scout replied, "and they bring with them a great force. They say they will take the valley by force if we refuse." Tarek's heart sank, but his resolve remained firm. He knew that the land and the wisdom of the guardians were worth protecting. This was not just a battle for territory. It was a battle for the future of the earth itself. "We cannot let them take what we've worked so hard to restore," Tarek said, his voice steady. "We will defend the valley, but we will also offer them a choice. We will not fight with hatred, but with the strength of the land itself. If they wish to understand, we will show them the way of the guardians." The tribe prepared for battle, but as they did, Tarek sent emissaries to the southern tribe, offering peace and a chance for cooperation. If the warriors of the south were willing to listen, they could share in the knowledge of the guardians, learn the ways of the earth, and join the Darash tribe in its mission to restore balance to the world. As the southern warriors approached, Tarek stood at the edge of the valley, the wind tugging at his cloak. He knew this was a defining moment. Would the other tribe choose war, or would they choose peace and cooperation? Would they join the Darash tribe in their mission to heal the earth, or would they destroy what had been so carefully built? The future of the land and of the world itself hung in the balance. As the southern warriors neared the valley, the air was thick with tension. The Darash tribe stood prepared, but unlike the warriors of the south, their hearts were calm. Tarek had given his message of peace, but the true test would come when the time arrived for the two forces to meet face to face. The southern tribe, known for their fierceness in battle, approached the valley with their banners held high, their weapons gleaming in the light of the setting sun. The leader of the southern tribe, a tall and formidable figure named Reuven, rode at the front, his eyes hard like stone. Behind him, hundreds of warriors followed, each one armed with the tools of war. Tarek and Quran stood at the entrance of the valley, with Arva and several trusted elders by their side. They did not raise weapons, but instead held the symbols of their commitment to peace. Small branches of the sacred trees, leaves still fresh with the earth's vitality. When Reuven and his warriors saw them, they halted. Tarek stepped forward, his voice strong and clear, yet full of respect. "You come seeking our land," Tarek began. "But the valley is not just a place for us to live. It is a living part of the earth, a guardian of all who walk upon it. We have healed the land, and it has become a place of peace and balance. We offer it to you, not as a conquest, but as a gift, if you are willing to join us." Reuven's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on the hilt of his sword. His people had been warriors for generations, and the idea of sharing what they could take by force was foreign to him. Yet, there was something in Tarek's voice, something in the way the valley seemed to hum with life, that made him hesitate. You speak of peace, but peace cannot feed a warrior's need for strength. Reuven growled, his voice rough. The southern lands are dying, and we must take what we need to survive. How do we know you will not turn us away when you have nothing left to offer? Tarek nodded thoughtfully. We understand the hardship that you face. We too once knew only hunger, only the need to survive. But now we live with the land, not against it. We take only what we need, and we give back to the earth. We have seen the power of the Guardians. The land will provide for all who respect it. If you join us, you will no longer need to take. The earth will feed you, heal you, and shelter you. A murmur ran through Reuven's warriors, their expressions a mix of curiosity and doubt. Reuven, still conflicted, looked out over the valley, his gaze lingering on the signs of new life. The budding trees, the fertile soil, the returning animals. Could the land truly provide, as Tarek claimed? Or was it just another illusion born of desperation? I am not a man of words, Tarek, Reuven said finally, his voice still carrying a trace of defiance. But I will listen. I will see if your ways are true. If you truly offer peace, we will take the chance. But if we find your promises empty, we will take this valley by force. Tarek bowed his head in respect. That is all we ask. Come, see for yourselves. Walk the land, speak with the people, and witness the balance we have restored. If you see what we see, you may yet find that peace is the way. With that, Tarek motioned for Reuven and his warriors to follow him. They entered the valley, the sounds of footsteps mingling with the calls of returning birds and the whisper of the wind through the trees. The tribe led them on a journey through the valley, showing them the sacred grove where the spirit of the trees resided, the fields where crops were now thriving, and the places where the animals roamed freely, unafraid. Reuven was silent for much of the walk, his gaze shifting from one sight to another, his mind working as he absorbed what he saw. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. This land, this harmony. The earth seemed alive in a way he had never felt before, and for the first time, he wondered if the ways of the Darash were not just the dreams of an idealistic few, but the reality of something far greater. As they reached the heart of the valley, where the great silver tree stood, Tarek stopped and turned to face Reuven. This tree is the heart of the land, he said, his voice quiet but filled with reverence. It is the guardian of the valley. It has watched over us for centuries. When the land was lost, it wept, but it did not die. It held the memory of the earth, and it taught us to listen. The guardians have always been with us, and they will guide us as long as we respect the land. Reuven stepped forward, his hand outstretched. He touched the tree's silver bark, and for a moment, he felt a rush of energy flow through him, a deep, calming presence that seemed to reach into his very soul. The vision came to him, unbidden, of a time long past when the earth was whole and all creatures lived in balance. He saw the rise and fall of civilizations, the endless struggle for power, and the endless destruction of the land. He saw, too, the hope of a future where people lived as stewards of the earth, not conquerors. When the vision faded, Reuven withdrew his hand, his face pale but thoughtful. "You have shown me something I did not believe possible," he said, his voice softer now, but no less firm. Perhaps there is another way. The warriors of the southern tribe, too, had witnessed the power of the valley, and many of them began to question the long-held beliefs of their people. They had known nothing but war and survival, but the idea of living in balance with the earth was beginning to take root in their hearts. Over the next few days, Reuven and his warriors lived alongside the Darash tribe. They helped plant seeds in the soil, learn the ways of the land, and listen to the stories of the guardians. Slowly, their hearts softened, and the warrior spirit that had driven them began to give way to something more, something that felt like hope that by end time, the southern tribe made a choice. They would stay, not as conquerors, but as allies. They would share in the knowledge of the Guardians and work alongside the Varash tribe to heal the land. The valley, which had once been the site of tension and fear, had become a place of unity and promise. And so the two tribes came together, not through war or force, but through understanding and respect. The earth had spoken to them, and they had listened. Together, they would rebuild what had been broken, and in time, the land would thrive once more. The story continues as the two tribes work side by side to restore balance to the earth. The challenges ahead are many, but with the wisdom of the Guardians and the unity of the people, there is hope for a future where the earth and its creatures are honored and protected.